Rachel, how are we?
I'm really good, Seán. How are you?
I know you saying you're really good because there's no Eric on the line. It's just the two of us in the podcast this week, or are you really good apart from that?
You mean the fact that we didn't have to wait 10, 15 minutes to start this
Yeah, I
while we
feel like
waited for it?
sometimes when the podcast started, it's like, why are Seán and Rachel a little bit agitated or a little bit eager to get going? It's because usually when we set up the podcast, it'd be like 1 o'clock or whatever time it is, we're going to get going on the podcast, and then it'd be a good 10, 15, sometimes 20, sometimes longer before he eventually gets online for it. I was like, oh, sorry, I've been a few minutes late. I'm like, I need a definition of what his a few is. But unfortunately, the big man can't be with us this week. He'll be back again next week of the podcast. So, Rachel, it's just me and you this week.
It is. And now for anyone listening, we're not just being mean behind his back. We would absolutely say that to his face. So
Every
don't
week.
worry about that. Yeah. We will keep him in line. No, yes, he is not here this week, but show must go on. Everyone's entitled to a week off. We won't cut him any slack because that's not who we are.
Nope.
So we'll make sure that he hears all about it.
100%. And with that said, I think we'll get straight into this week's episode of the podcast. So hit the intro music and let's go. Speaking of the big man, me and him always have this discussion, and no matter how many times and how many different facts and stuff I throw at him on this, and once again, I don't mind saying on the podcast because I say it to him constantly, and I think he does it now more to wind me up than anything else. But we did Quest last week, and I can't remember exactly the figure, but we had a bit of bite to eat afterwards, and he's like, look how many calories I burnt, and he pointed to his watch, and I'm like, man, I don't know how many times I've told you that Garmin's and stuff are great. Don't get me wrong. I love my Garmin. I wear my Garmin all the time. I'm constantly looking at it for different stats and stuff and different things like that. But when it comes to calories being burnt, they are not the most accurate things in the world. And very few fitness trackers are, but they're getting better. Like they did a study in 2016 on this where like they were between 16 and 40% inaccurate on calories being burnt. Actually, 2017 went the other way. It was like between 27 and 93% overestimating how many calories being burnt, which is even worse because if you're putting that into your MyFitnessPal and you're like, hey, I burnt, 600 calories running when it was actually 300 calories running. Next thing you start overeating and stuff like that from there. 2019, I did a study on the Garmin heart rate, the Garmin Vivio Smart, the heart rate plus, and that was up to 20% inaccurate. Once again, overestimating. So they're good guidelines, but if you rely on these things as absolute fact, and then you put your nutrition in line with it, and you are doing calories in, calories out in your diet, maybe you're going for a summer beach body, whatever it is that this summer you want to lose a bit of weight, great, best of luck to you. But if you're going with exactly what the watch is telling you and using that as gospel and figuring out why it's not working, it could be because these things are overestimating how much. Have you had any experience with that, Rachel?
Well, anytime that, if you look up this stuff, it does say that they estimate your calories burned. And like, you ever hop on a machine and you're not connected to heart rate and it's still telling you how many calories you've burned? Like in the gym, if you're on like the stationary bike or the treadmill, it's spitting out these calories burned figures at you. And you're like, this machine has no idea what this relative intensity is for me. But you have to remember that while the calorie counting is, it's an estimate, it is based off heart rate. So then you raise the question of, well, how accurate is the heart rate monitor?
Yeah,
and what kind of algorithm do they have to determine calories burned versus heart rate? How do they measure intensity? You just can go down this wormhole of questions.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm on the assault bike, and I know the assault bike uses where you've hit a certain meter mark or certain revolutions, then that'll count the calories and it does it that way. But like I could hop on it and you could hop on it because you're using the Swift and everything else so much. You could go a lot faster on that thing, but your intensity wouldn't be as high. Whereas if I went to the same revolutions per minute on it as you would, I might blow up on it because I wouldn't be used to going as high as you would. So my intensity, my heart rate's up, and if that's not tracking my true heart rate, it's completely different how many calories burned. And plus, different male, female, heights, muscle that we both have and everything, that all comes into like sitting at rest. How many calories I'm burning to what you're burning is completely different. So especially if heart rate's not involved, that this thing is way off. And even, I think I've spoke about this before. I use the MyZone belts, the heart rate monitors. And even when they're telling us how to use that for clients and all the rest, they say that the calories that are on that thing, just ignore it. The figure is not that accurate. And I think it's very important to stress, especially if people are taking up running now for the sole purpose of losing weight, and they're going off, oh, it burns this amount of calories per hour. This is the best thing for me to do.
Yeah, like I think if you're starting off with that intention of, losing weight, counting your calories is a very effective way of doing it, but it has to be that trial and error. Like, as you said, a lot of times they overestimate it, which is nearly worse for you. You end up replacing more food, nearly stuffing yourself to try and replace those calories when you maybe didn't burn that much. But I think starting out, like, I don't know, I'm very much listen to your body. And I think that comes from years of like heart rate training where I didn't quite understand what I was doing and, messing things up, is that if you start looking at the numbers, I find you lose track of the feeling. Have you any experience with that?
Yeah, like I when I've done different diets and different things throughout the years, and I'd always just go, okay, if I was doing a low carb diet, which was I was big on back in the day, for those 6 weeks, to your point, like I'd be sometimes like really, really, really hungry, but I'd be like, I gotta stick with it and not listen to my body. So at the end of the 6 weeks, while I definitely lost weight, I definitely lost a lot of strength and stuff in the gym, and I wasn't but performance went down, even though the body fat went down, because I wasn't listening to it. But at the same time, it would have taught me, now I don't count calories, and obviously count calories out versus calories in will determine fat loss. That's a given. We're not arguing that at all. I do think to a certain extent, by doing like 6 week diets and stuff, you can kind of find out what works for you, what your energy levels are like, if, to your point, you're listening to your body. And then afterwards, like, no one wants to count calories every single day of their life and what's working and just doing the maths all the time. But if you listen to your body, see what kind of foods are working for you, and then checking your energy levels in the gym or when you're doing your intervals and your different cycles and all the rest, that's when you start to learn your own body, your own process. And to your point, learn about your different heart rate zones and everything else that goes with it.
Exactly. Now, I think we both have experience in this counting calories. It's something I never did. Like, I, throughout all my training, never once looked at a packet of anything. I couldn't tell you the calories in a single thing I ever ate. Throughout my whole running, because, it just was another thing. I eat when I'm hungry. That's what I do. Or at least I try to eat when I'm hungry. But I did decide to count my calories. It's probably a year ago now. I downloaded, is it the MyFitnessPal app?
Yeah.
Now, I think if you are looking for an app to count your calories that you consume, so obviously, unless you pair everything up, you can pair your devices to this app and it does give you your calories burnt. But it is so amazing for your calorie intake because you just scan the barcode.
Yeah.
And most foods I've come across are already in this app, like preset with the amount of calories. So I think if you were looking for an app that's very user friendly, that one would be probably one that's recommended. What do you reckon?
I would recommend it because ShePlug, you can also connect it with the Any Given Train Day app.
Oh, excellent.
So Eric does that a lot with his nutrition clients. So it's connected with that it's easier to scan stuff, and it's easier to scan the calories in, to your point, with that.
Oh, like it was so easy. But I suppose the reason I started doing it was because I was concerned that I wasn't eating enough. So I wasn't, like, there was no intention to lose weight. There was no intention to gain weight. Like, when I stopped training seriously a few years ago, I did put on weight. But like when I was training seriously, I was down at 54, 55 kg.
Okay.
Like, that's not normal for
Yeah.
like that's not my body's normal weight. That was the extreme running weight. And then when I stopped running, I put on weight, but then I plateaued once I kind of hit what would be my natural weight, let's say.
Yeah.
So, I was still around that, not trying to lose weight because I knew anything less was just my peak sort of fitness weight, whatever. Wasn't trying to gain it either. I was just concerned that I wasn't giving my body enough replenishment after exercise.
Were you
So
feeling
that was
tired
my
after? Or were you
yeah, like
less energy for the next session, or?
I don't even know why I started doing it. So probably was during one lockdown. So I had probably started, like I go through, I'm definitely a peaks and troughs kind of person with my training.
Yeah.
Like I'll hit a few weeks, but then if I'm busy or stuff going on, I'm quite happy to give training a kind of a secondary position in my life for a while. That took a long time to be okay with that. Like being like, oh, I can actually do that instead of training today. That's a whole different story. Being able to say, no, I need a few weeks easy. And so I reckon it was one of those where I was like, okay, I actually not too busy, bit of free time. I'm gonna up the intensity. And I think it was around the time cycling really took off for me.
Right.
And just not knowing, this new sport, and suddenly I was doing it a lot. So I think that was my motivation for counting my calories.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I was going to say, how long did it last? I can't remember.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing. Even if you did it a 4 to 6 weeks thing, when people are doing their diets or their 6 week fat loss challenge, whatever, the important thing I think people should get, obviously the end result, the end goal is the reason they're doing it. But during those 6 weeks is developing those habits, developing like, okay, this amount of food gives me a certain amount of energy to do whatever afterwards. I don't need to eat this, and this, or when do I was going to say inappropriately snack, but just snacking for the sake of snacking or eating for the sake of eating. And what do I replace that habit with? And that will overall have the lowering the calories. And to your point, not always constantly looking in the back of the pack. It's a good thing, and not always having it on your mind. So if you allow yourself to eat whatever on a certain day to a certain point, so you're looking at your calories over the course of a week. So if you're down, let's say, argument's sake, like 300 calories less Monday through Friday, and that gives you 1,500 calories down heading to the weekend. If you're eating an extra 700 calories on a Saturday and Sunday, you're still 100 calories down. And then with the training and stuff on top of it, you can have the energy expenditures so that you're burning more than what's coming in. I went on a mad tangent. I'm not going to lie, Rachel. I have no idea where it's going with that.
I think, though, you need to be careful as well, because your calories, it's not an accumulation. Like, just because you eat more calories than you maybe burn one day, doesn't mean you do the direct opposite another day. I think that's a real common misconception, that people think, oh, no, I maybe had that takeaway tonight, so I need to eat a bit less. I might skip lunch today. Like, that is such a red flag. Like, no.
Yeah, that's. I mean, and you had a couple of different people on the podcast a while ago, edible evidence and all the rest, and talking about.
Yeah, Catherine Stewart.
Yeah, and that could be. That's when you get into more the different relationship you have with food, like purposely restricting yourself for such a long time to have something else afterwards, and then everything being dictated by that instead of just sometimes just saying, look, enjoy it, get back on track then the next day with your training and stuff and feeling good from there.
Exactly. And like, that's something that if you're not counting your calories, your takeaway, you're going to think it was delicious. Whereas if you're thinking, oh yeah, it was delicious, but now I feel bad, but you're looking at the numbers, it just ruins it for you. Like, everyone is entitled to a cheat day. Like, actually, if you want to feel good about your cheat day, follow The Rock on Instagram.
I was thinking the same person.
Someone promote a cheat day like The Rock promotes it, and it just shows like is there anyone strong, like in terms of his work ethic, and like, I mean, he's just insane.
Yeah.
But he makes sure that he has his cheat meals every single week without fail. Does he feel guilty? Absolutely not. So if you really want to feel good about your cheat meals, go look up his cheat meal posts. I
mean,
guarantee you'll feel better.
Yeah, now don't eat the exact same thing he eats, because he's probably having 5,000 calories in that, and he's able to, because like we got back to earlier, that's the size of the guy. But he obviously enjoys his food, so he makes it work for him. Like, you shouldn't, any kind of goal, or you shouldn't be depriving yourself of food if you enjoy your food. Like, but obviously there is some sort of balance. You can't just have what the Rock eats every single day of the week, and he's probably clean 6 to 7 days in the 7th day, because he knows if he gets the cravings on Thursday, he's probably like, okay, in 2 days or 3 days time, I'm gonna have what I want. I'm near the end of the week. I gotta keep focused, keep going, and then he enjoys his food and stuff from there, and he has that balance. And I think that's what comes with time, is that balance. And where I'm at now with my food is, I'm lucky enough, I've talked before in the podcast, is I'm a plain eater. I eat the same thing pretty much every day, set routine, apart from my dinners. My dinners always change up. My breakfast is pretty much similar, same times. I have this, so because in 4 or 5 hours I'm working, I won't get a chance to eat again. I know when I have before I'm training and all the rest. So, and then I check I check my in-body every couple of weeks or months, and see how that relates to what I'm doing in the gym in terms of getting stronger. Am I getting stronger? Am I getting faster on the roads? And if those metrics are going up and the metrics are roughly the same in the in-body or slightly improving, I'm very happy with that. And my energy levels and stuff are feeling good. But that's taken a few different low-carb approaches and all the rest to get there. And I'm saying low carb's the best thing. That's just what worked for me in a way back in the day. Now I wouldn't do it because I don't feel like I need to. But the basic advice in that, we just increase your protein and then build around that from there, and add in your little snacks and stuff throughout the day.
Yeah, exactly. And like your dinner plate, I mean, just go back to school, like when you were learning about the food pyramid, like that is the basis for a healthy diet. Now, even since I was in school, it's changed.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was teaching it, I was looking at this food pyramid going, when did they change this? So it's no longer carbs on the bottom. It's fruit and veg on the bottom as your recommended most amount. But it is done in portions, that the stuff at the top of the pyramid, and apologies for the science lesson, but the stuff at the top of the pyramid, like your sweets, your sugars, are the stuff you eat the least. And then as you go down, it's what you should be eating the most of every day. And your dinner plate especially should reflect that in terms of the amount of proteins or, meat, chicken. But if you don't eat that, you still need to replace the meat with maybe a corn or some sort of high protein option. But then your or not fruit for dinner, but your veggies should be a large portion of your plate. And I think Irish people are quite bad for that. You have your meat and your spuds, and then a lot of the time the veggies are like a side thought. Oh, sure, I'll stick a few peas on. Or, oh, here, throw me a carrot there. I'll chop it up there quickly. And I think that if we can improve, and I'm not saying as a whole country that everyone's bad at this, but I think Irish people tend to focus on the meat and the potatoes or something. So there are things like that you can do. But then depending on whether you need more protein or more carbs depends on the training you're doing. For women, it can be, the time of the month as well. You should be eating more protein at certain times of the month. Again, I had some amazing guests on the podcast before Christmas. So check out that conversation with Catherine Stewart or Edible Evidence, with Martina Dunn as well from Fit Manal.
Yeah.
And so some really insightful information there. But I think you can do that without ever thinking about a calorie. You can get your dinner plate proper, and proper as in meet all your needs without ever counting a calorie.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I heard an analogy on it recently enough in terms of why you should count calories is if you constantly feel like you're gaining weight and you don't know why. It's the same as if you constantly feel like you are spending money and you don't know why or where it's going. Then maybe pull back and start budgeting and stuff like that. But if you feel like you're somewhat balanced, but you'd like to, for lack of a better term, tone up a bit for the summer, Then maybe, like you said, you increase your fruit and your veg, increase your water intake, increase your protein intake, because if you increase your protein intake on your plate, you're just going to be full a lot quicker, and you're going to have less calories from the carbs and the fats, and because you're not going to have as much calories and stuff from the protein, because we're not eating like 3-4 steaks on a plate. It's just not going to have that much. Whereas you probably could have a big plate of chips or whatever it is, and over consume on the carbs that way. So if you're looking just to tone a bit more, I'd increase your protein, increase your fruit and veg, add a bit of water, and then slowly start tracking your progress over time, as well as tracking what other the fitness goals. And I suppose the whole point of bringing this up in the podcast is that when you finish a race or you finish a run, you finish a training session, the first metric you shouldn't be think of is how many calories have I burnt in that session, because that should be the least important thing to you. It should be whatever that run is. Did I run what the goal set was for that? Or if you had a training session, did I hit X amount of weights on a deadlift or a squat or whatever it was, whatever the goal of the session was, and keep following that metric in the physical activity, as opposed to thinking how many calories you may have burnt, because the fact is, whatever your watch tells you is not 100% accurate. And it can be, as we've seen, as far as 93% inaccurate and overestimated. So why would you base your training on a figure that is not going to be true and could be detriment to you if you overeat to try and catch up on it?
Well, just going to that, like not trusting calories. I was doing a Zwift race, and the league I was doing was Tuesday evenings in Irish time.
Okay.
And like you wouldn't be finishing until maybe 8:30 at night. And after one particular race, I think this particular race could have been an hour 45 actually. So I was finishing about 9:00 at night, and my watch told me that I'd burnt 1,000 calories. And it's not the first time I've seen my watch tell me I've burnt 1,000 calories. And I'm here at 9:00 at night thinking, okay, work in the morning, so I have to be up at 6, and I somehow need to replace 1,000 calories. Like, you can see why it causes a lot of stress. Now, I mean, I did have my dinner, and then I jumped in the car and went to McDonald's and got my 20 share pack of nuggets, which I didn't share with anyone. Like, absolutely no regret. But, when you see the figure, suddenly I was like, okay, I'm going to McDonald's to get extra calories, instead of I'm going to McDonald's because I am still starving after my dinner and I want to have something to fill me. It was about the numbers. And like, how accurate is that number? Like 1,000 calories. Like, I don't know. I just don't know if it was accurate. But that was playing on my mind for the evening, that I want to go to bed pretty soon after the race because I need to be up early for work the next day. But I want to try and replace as many of these calories. Then you're going to bed with a lot of food in your stomach, which is one of the worst things you can do.
Yeah, it's disrupt your sleep. Like, a lot of people go to bed with a heavy stomach. Especially if you're not used to it, you go to bed on a heavy stomach, it'll mess your sleep. And then all of a sudden your recovery's feeling bad. And then you wake up going, well, I'm not fully recovered. I don't feel 100%. Was that because I didn't eat enough calories? Or is that because, and what's more likely the case, you just didn't sleep well that night because you're up trying to eat these food and you're stressed and stuff over that. So to your point, listen to your body. Figure out what works for you. Track it, write it down. So if you're constantly doing those races on a Tuesday evening, or you're in a gym on a Tuesday evening, it's a case of, okay, what food did I have beforehand? What food did I have afterwards? How did I feel the next day? How did I feel the next session? And yes, it's a bit of work to keep writing those down, or even having a notes on your phone or whatever it is. But at least you know then what works for you and how you feel and how you recover in the next session, rather than anything else.
Exactly. But that was just one example I had of where the number just seemed really far-fetched, but then I was kind of hooked on it. I actually don't think my current watch tells me calorie, or maybe it does and I just don't look at it. Yeah, I think it does, and I just don't look at it. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I have lost a small bit of weight recently, but that's because I upped my training. I've upped my training a lot in the last few months. But I know my diet is good. And one thing I've actually started doing and being really consistent with is meal planning. So my dinners and my lunches. Right. So every week on a Sunday, so I did it this morning, is my partner and I just say, right, what do you want for dinner during the week? And just make sure that every dinner I plan, I'm getting a protein, I'm getting some form of carbs, I'm getting usually veg or salad. Like salad is a great option. Just have have a bag of salad in your fridge because you can throw it with every meal and you're
Good point.
your veg with you. And it's so easy to do. And I just find not only has that made dinner less stressful, I know that I'm getting what I need, but then I've also had a lot of less waste with my shopping. I don't think I've thrown out hardly any food recently, which is a big win.
You've prepped it, you planned it.
Yeah, and like I'm not planning to the point where, okay, I need to have exactly 1 cup of rice today. Like I know roughly how much portion I need to feel full. Like once you hit full, you shouldn't force any more food into you. If you have to after your dinner, if you need a snack an hour later, it's better to have a small snack an hour later than to force extra food into your stomach and feel very bloated or, just uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's definitely much better to get to that point where you almost feel full for dinner rather than thinking about calories, then under-eating, because then that snack an hour later turns into almost a second meal because you are hungry because you're after depriving yourself of the food and calories that you probably need to keep going.
Exactly. Like there's a reason why your body tells you you're hungry or tells you you're full. Like it wouldn't do that if we were programmed to count our calories all the time. You wouldn't have that brain signal saying, oh, I'm hungry. Okay, that must mean my body needs food. Or, okay, I'm full. So, and I mean, I know there is a difference. Like you can be full on crap food and then be full on good food. But you'll start figuring it out what foods keep you full for longer.
Yeah, and as well as that, then the crap and the good food comes into how you feel with your body in general, and back to training again. If you're all constantly eating the crap food, and you're gonna feel lethargic when you're training, and you're like something's not right there. You're not getting in the vitamins, minerals, fruits, and veg, and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to just, I actually saw something probably online somewhere about, if you're trying to lose weight, a lot of the time humans go straight to restricting. Okay, I'm going to cut out X, Y, Z. We go straight to that negative restriction. But then I saw this thing where it's like, well, if it was your dog and the vet told you your dog had to lose X amount of pounds or kilograms, what would you do? How would you get your dog to lose weight?
You asking me because we only have a pup in the house. Yeah. I don't know how to train the pup, and I'm getting awful abuse over it. So,
if your pup starts gaining weight,
we're going for walks, aren't we?
Exactly. You're increasing your exercise. Okay, let's say you're already exercising a lot. What's the next thing you would do?
You wouldn't eat as much.
You'd reduce portion size. You're not telling your pup that he can't have this brand over this brand because brand. You just do go for a smaller portion size. So if you know you're eating good food and you're exercising a lot, but like you said, you're maybe still gaining a bit of weight, not sure why, maybe start off with the portion size instead of jumping straight to restriction. Now, again, I'm not a dietitian, but if you're having a lot of sugar and things like that, well, then you would need to cut out. But if you're doing everything mostly right, sticking to your kind of food pyramid and still putting on weight, then I would look at portion size and start reducing that.
If you're told I can't have this, I automatically want it. It's like, don't think of the pink elephant. Like if you're thinking I can never have this, it's the same with the Social Dilemma. I think it was on Netflix. And it's the same principle because you're told like you can never look at one of the stories in it was the guy's phone was locked up for 7 days and he kept getting that endorphin feeling. That's not the exact term, I can't remember what it's called, to keep wanting to look at it. It's like you can never look at it. Whereas if you had something that would slowly reduce the time where you could look at it, you wouldn't feel like, oh my God, I have to see what's on my phone, what I'm missing out on all the time. If you take something away completely, it just makes you crave it and want it more. Whereas if you have that balance, and like you talked about there with the food pyramid, your sugars and your sweets and all, it's still on the pyramid. It's still there to have. Like, it's not saying you should never have it. And people are like, oh, well, they're chemicals, whatever. It's like, guess what? They're chemicals in absolutely everything. So, it's not good food or bad food. There's balances there. And as long as you're getting enough of your proteins and your vitamins and minerals in as well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having your different sugars, different things like that, because, hey, it works for The Rock. And I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, I think so. But then that's also like I have a sweet tooth. I nearly have to have something sweet every day. So you might just have an ice cream after dinner. Yeah. Get it in somehow. And like,
you can make it work.
Yeah, you really can. And like, there's so many options out there for doing it without getting hooked on the number of calories you've eaten. Like, you'll know if you're really tired, not recovering properly, muscles are sore. You could take a quick guess and be like, okay, what was my hydration and my nutrition like yesterday? Pretty crap. That could explain it. No numbers involved there, just quick self-assessment. How can I fix that? Well, here's a list of what I've been eating, if you're keeping track of it. You can figure it out without having to go down that rabbit hole. Because, I did stop it, and I stopped it because I'm not a fan of cooking anyway. Lunch stresses me out. Like, I can't even explain how much trying to decide what to have for lunch and making lunch stresses me out. Because I'm not like you. I like to have different things.
And most people are, in fairness. Like, most people don't have 10 chickens outside for eggs, so...
But yeah, true. We had about 20 outside for eggs. But then having to take a picture of every single packet I used, like, it just got a bit much for me. And then you'd nearly be putting off having lunch. Oh, I can't be asked doing all that now. Or maybe I'll just put off lunch. Am I really that hungry? Could I just wait till dinner? Like, for me, it just wasn't worth it. Like,
yeah. 100%. I can't say any more than that, to be honest with you.
Like, it is just personal. Some people love it, and like if you do it correctly, and you kind of know if your watch is pretty accurate, or you have a good sense, you've been doing it for a while, maybe. Yeah, absolutely, go for it. Some people have got incredible results on it. I had no, like I said, ambitions to lose weight or to gain weight or anything. I just was more curious as to whether I was getting enough food. But like, my energy levels, my performance, like, there's all of these metrics that I can feel without having to see the numbers. And that was something that once I start looking at numbers, I lose track of the feeling.
Yeah, because you're like, the numbers are telling me what I should be, as opposed to actually taking that step back and hang on a second, how do I feel? But I love we've done this whole podcast, which was we talked about calories and stuff at the start of it, and then we went completely into nutrition without the big man who has the nutrition qualifications on for the podcast. So completely stepping on his toes, but hey, he's not here at the moment, so his loss in that one. With that said, Rachel, anything else to add to the podcast before we wrap this one up?
No, I think it's good. Like, with everything, what works for me, what works for you, Seán, might not work for someone listening, but play around with it. You will figure it out, and results don't happen overnight. So whatever it is, whether it's figuring out your recovery or losing weight or toning up, it's not going to happen overnight. So work hard.
100%. Yeah, progress is a slow process. It takes time. Little wins each week. We'll get to that big ring over time. And with that said, guys, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. That's it for myself and Rachel. Take care.
Bye.